If I told you Bastion could break the best teams in the world, would you believe me?
I need that good price. When the plug turn pagan, tweaking, talking inflation, peace is needed, getting impatient.
Last weekend, the newly buffed Bastion was played on Circuit Royale, dominating the second best European team. But how? After all, this was the only time we saw Bastion across all three regions. Well, get ready for artillery strikes Kim Jong-un would be proud of, turrets that shredded anyone who peeked, alongside Ram getting a little bit of a pounding. Now, even though this video is centered around Bastion, the Mei and Orisa play a pivotal part too. These three heroes make an extremely cyclical comp, basically meaning they've got a really high peak potential by combining turrets, Mei wall and Orisa spin, forming a cooldown cycle. Of course, this is pretty basic stuff that we've seen in the past. So the real question is, why does having a strong cycle matter in this specific case? Well, as usual, the map plays a big part. The narrowness of Circuit Royale means it's very hard for the Sym and Ram to disengage and de-peak the Bastion cycle. Sure, maybe Yubi could use his TP to retreat backwards, but then you're just giving the Bastion comp way more space. It's for this reason that, in the first fight, Lubda catches funny Astro out in the open, in part because he's got nowhere to go. A secondary part is that this comp kinda counters what the Ram Sym want to do. Sym wants to charge her beam early, usually off the tank, then look to take different angles to beam squishies on high beam charge. You can see here, Checkmate farms his beam off KSA, then TPs to the Juno to try and beam for the kill. Obviously this won't happen every time, but the reason I bring this all up is because Bastion stops the Symmetra from being able to farm up that beam. She needs to de-peak, which unfortunately leaves KSA alone on the front line with his hands up. This nicely leads me on to countering Ram, which shouldn't take much explaining. You're very much prone to getting frozen, either by Mei's ultimate or by her major perk, and you can get speared and blown up too, something that's absolute cinema to watch later on. I also asked Capitology for his thoughts too, and he mentioned that Checkmate often walled off the TP. Looking at POVs, the TP is still actually usable despite the wall, so I think it's more of a secondary thing, with the priority still being to wall off KSA. It's also worth mentioning the surprise aspect of this comp too. Twisted Minds just don't know exactly where to move to, and some cooldowns like Ram Shield get wasted early. In fact, if Yubi had just TP'd to the top right, he'd get this really nice triple angle pincer that easily wins them the first fight. Bastion Mei Orisa lack the mobility to clear these angles easily, something you can see Quartz try and abuse but to little avail. Now, you can see that stronger cycle really impacting Twisted Minds. KSA pops the form while Quartz is high up in the air. But because the Bastion has so much threat, Lubda is able to zone away Quartz and soon lands the kill onto Yubi. I actually don't hate what Yubi does here despite dying. If he stands with his Ramatra, he'll die. If he TPs back, he and his team will C9 the points. It's actually a great boot by Kellex that allows the kill to go through in the first place. I think we all know Haku from last stage is not hitting this. Having got the kill, this basically offsets the biggest downside of this comp, where if you don't get value on your cooldowns, you're cooked. As the point inches closer and closer, Ziad pushes KSA without form, while Checkmate pops the wall to block off Quartz. For the cherry on top, the window from Simple is just too little too late, meaning Twisted Minds lose this fight, while also losing an ultimate. The next wing becomes even more potent with Lando's window advantage. Lubda almost one-shots Yubi with just the damage boosted nade, but even without the kill, TM are forced to scatter, leaving KSA alone. I do think Ziad's repush is a little bit excessive, but it's partially covered by the Bastion ult. With that being said, you can see how the Sym Ram push back once the cycle is over, with Yubi even dropping the wall too. Ziad is eventually forced to pop Terra Surge just to live, but Kellex's B allow Alcad to flood KSA. The Blizzard is also a little bit excessive, but it's good for aura farming purposes. Before I continue, just a quick coaching plug. You can get my coaching either through Metafy or through my Discord. Check it out down below. Now, heading into third points, you'd expect the Bastion team to straight up lose, just based off ult economy. But I think you know where this is going. Initially, Landon pops the window on the corner while the rest of Alcad swing. Unfortunately, Checkmate's wall is a little bit more difficult to use because third point is a lot more open, allowing the Freya Juno to avoid it. Quartz hits a big bowler shot too, but Alcad just shrug it off anyways, and we're back to a stalemate. The real breakthrough comes from Yubi, who's holding his own angle in the right side room. The issue though is that he's fairly easy to clear, which ends up being evident by the Lucio Mei pushing the left side, as well as Ziad hitting a clutch spear under the cart. Again, I think Yubi has the right general idea, but unlike other angles he could have taken earlier, he needs to be both hard to clear and dangerous to clear. It's simply not dangerous at all for the Lucio Mei to clear him because nobody on Twisted Minds has LOS to them. Had Yubi played by the back stairs instead, it would honestly be a lot tougher for the Bastion comp to swing around the corner. They just can't clear or push the high ground. Now, things do become quite messy as Symbol pops the window and when Keisei pops the Annihilation, finding checkmates. However, because of the blizzards, he gets traded out, causing Yubi to commit a pretty bad sim wall. At the end, it's a Terra Surge artillery combo that secures out the fight win. But because of how long the fight went, Landon's got a second window and Kellex has a beat in his back pockets. As for Bastion's artillery, we only got to see two use cases. The one we just saw was a simple ult combo, and the one before was essentially covering Ziad's push and helping him kite back. If you watched my number 1 Bastion video, you already know the 3-step combo to pulling off one-shot artilleries. Artillery isn't complicated, but that doesn't give you an excuse to waste it. Fortunately, we also got a listen in a bit earlier into the match too, when Alcatia rolled out on the Bastion. I'll play it in full, then break it down after. The first thing you hear is a simple 3-2-1 timing call. It's very simple and shit like this has existed back in the Jane days, but it just ensures that everybody on the team are on the same page. The second thing you hear are target calls. Again, this call switch isn't anything crazy, Astro just happens to be killable on the swing. Thirdly though, you'll hear a call that Freya is behind, with a counter call saying push main. I really like this call because the Freya isn't actually that dangerous. If you've watched my previous stuff, you'll know that teams have to choose between clearing flankers or out-rotating them. In other words, clearing Freya or out-rotating her by pushing forwards. Because the Mei Bastion comp has so much bulk, something that Capitology also mentioned to me, they can choose to out-rotate her and push main. It's stuff like this that keeps Alcatia on the same page. A bad team would have gotten split, pushed on their own angles, and die on some Miles Morales type shit, doing their own thing. Now, back to the last fight, you can see Alcatia TP to the high ground, popping window. This forces the backline of TM to scatter, leaving poor Keisei alone on the front line. And now, all it takes is one single javelin to eviscerate his entire HP bar. And while things do get slightly messy, the fight is basically over, and Alcatia don't just win, but dominate on the Bastion comp. Now, you might be wondering how you beat this, and I actually think TM's comp is perfectly fine. We saw Astro swap off the Lucio to Juno a bit earlier, mainly because Juno just has a higher throughput than Lucio, basically meaning she can just do more numbers wise at no extra cost. It's really Yubi that ends up bottlenecking this map, with questionable TPs, multiple first deaths, and really odd ult usage. Again, it's something that Cap mentioned to me when he first watched the game. In fairness, you can't expect him to play perfectly against a cheese comp, but still. Now on to addressing your comments, but honestly, because my last video was a tier list, I really don't want to respond to room temperature IQ takes. At least the top comments were quite funny. As always, click the video on screen if you enjoyed, and until next time.